episode of Global View, we will be exploring economic inequality. Economic inequality is a prevailing issue within both wealthy and developing countries. The first quarter of 2022 reported that in the United States, the top 1% of households and nonprofit organizations made up 31.9% of all net worth in the U.S. On the other hand, the bottom 50% made a meager 3% of it all. While the rich became richer, lower-income Americans are left with lower salaries and less money to live on. The Gini coefficient, varying from 0 to 1, is used to measure income inequality. The closer the number is to 0 indicates a higher amount of equality, and the 1 depicts perfect inequality. Disparities in wealth seen in not only the United States but also globally can be caused by a multitude of different factors. I had the opportunity to interview Orja Minot, a leader in her community and a proponent of economic equality. Here it is. Can you please introduce yourself and feel free to include information like your background and any other information you feel is relevant to the topic?
Hey everyone, my name is Orja Minot and I'm a sophomore attending Richard Montgomery High School in Maryland. I'm really excited to be on this podcast. I think it covers a lot of important topics that I've definitely witnessed with my own eyes, and I've advocated to advance those topics to a lot of other people. So um, yeah, I think a very integral part of myself is the fact that I've grown up in three diverse countries. And I think that's an experience that definitely has shaped me and led me to advocate for a lot of the things and led me to be involved in a lot of the things that I am involved in today. And so I serve as the CEO and founder of Equality Through Education, which is ETE. And I thought of this in ninth grade. And, when I first thought of it, it wasn't just kind of a project I was starting. It was a response to all the needs that I saw growing up in these countries. And I think growing up, I had a lot of experiences that exposed me to disparities in education specifically. And I think that that's at the core of the topic we're discussing today, economic inequality. I couldn't help but question why some individuals or students had a smoother path to success than other people. And I really think that in today's world, especially, your background and circumstances really shape what you pursue in the future. And I really don't think that should be the case. And I think like students' potential is often limited by a system that favors their privilege or over their merit and what they're achieving in school. And I think that's a huge divider in today's world. And that's something that my organization, ET, has been trying to combat. Um,
So, how have you seen economic inequality affect people within your community and even your family specifically?
my family, we all lived in India for around 8 years. And growing up, my dad was really, he didn't grow up in a very privileged household. So he struggled for a lot of those like basic amenities that a lot of people have access to in the US or other parts of the world. So for example, like he would struggle to get like electricity and just to study. So he had big hopes and dreams, but sometimes those resources aren't available to you, and that's a struggle that he saw in a lot of his peers as well. Yeah. After I started ETE, I went on a summer trip to India, and that was the first time I kind of witnessed, the firsthand impact of the work we were doing. So this is a community in an underprivileged part of India, and meeting with the students and teachers here really made it feel like what we were doing from the US was making a difference. Sitting halfway across the world, it wasn't very clear that like, oh, is this program that we're launching or is this initiative really going to bring about the change that we want to see? And when I visited the place, I felt that we were actually making a difference. And I felt pride in the organization. And so this was a place where my father also grew up. And, my one goal was to go back to the places where he had experienced all these negative things. And I wanted to bring about change there. So I think this was one area where I've definitely seen income or inequality affect a lot of people.
What do you believe the American economy could look like in 50 years? Will economic inequality lead to its downfall?
Um, Yeah, I think that's a very like loaded question, but I think that economic inequality, if not solved, will definitely affect our economy. And the US is a leading economic power, and I think what happens in the US also affects a lot of countries. The US often sets an example as a world leader of what other countries should follow, and I think that it's really time to build on our programs and um, launch specific initiatives for communities. And I think that that's a big space where of social innovation, where a lot of nonprofits come into play. Nonprofits and especially student-led nonprofits, I think that's a really great area where we can bring about change. um, so I think that the way this generation is being shaped and the way we're going, um, I don't think that economic inequality will lead to downfall because we're working so hard to fix everything. But like I was talking about the nonprofit space, I think that that's specifically very, very helpful because those nonprofits target communities that we often don't think about at the federal level. So, for example, if we were launching these programs on a federal level, there's a lot of communities that we don't take into consideration, which have very specific needs. And that's the core problem that a lot of nonprofits work to solve. Um, so I think that getting to those communities that are not very, represented in our population is one thing that we definitely need to work towards.
So, what do you think are the main contributions to this issue?
Um, Yeah, I think the biggest contribution, I think, like I said, to this issue is definitely education. Education shapes the way people pursue their careers, what they do in the future, and the way they contribute to the economy. Um, so I think education is definitely one of them. I would say the opportunity gap, again, relating to education, is a big proponent to this issue. So yeah, I think our current tax system is definitely one of the biggest contributors as well, because as many of you know, the top 1% pay less percentage of their income. And so this is defined as income inequality, which is another, side piece of the issue of economic inequality. So yeah, I think that that definitely needs some fixing because I believe that if lower income groups are providing more of their income, they're getting stripped of the things that they could pursue. So, for example, they're only restricted to, fulfilling their most basic needs, and they can't, for example, think of pursuing higher education on the master's level or the PhD level, and that's definitely, I think, majorly affecting our economy as well.
So, what, in your opinion, is the best course of action that needs to be taken?
Yeah, okay. Youth empowerment and support for this issue is definitely a big, thing that we can step that we can take to solve this issue. Um, like I said, a lot of nonprofits and working in the social space has definitely shown me that um, the youth voice provides a perspective that government leaders often miss out on. So I think that the government needs to kind of take a step back and evaluate the problem first, because I feel like if we rush towards taking all these steps, we're not considering everyone and all the communities that are getting affected by this issue. So first I would say taking a step back and recognizing all the people that are already working in the space, taking expert opinions. I think that we often get mixed into the political aspect of it, but of course politics is a big part of our world today. But I think that taking advice from experts like economists or financial advisors is definitely a big thing that needs to be taken into consideration.
Okay, so do you think most Americans are aware of this problem?
Um, yeah, so I think the way our education system is shaped today, there's definitely classes that are informing students of this. So, for example, where I live, in in economics class, we often talk about this issue. And also, we have another class, financial literacy, and that's another big topic that is covered in that class as well. But I think that I believe in the AP curriculum that most schools follow, this is not a topic that is touched upon very majorly. And I think that that's something that definitely needs change. So, informing the youth about this will lead to the next generation being informed about this as well. So I think that that's a big step that could be a solution to this problem.
Okay, so any last thoughts?
Yeah, I think that this problem is one that's big to solve, and I think that steps are definitely being taken. But I would encourage everyone to get involved in nonprofits that tackle this problem, and just build awareness about it. And I think that listening to this podcast was definitely a big step that you took. And yeah, very grateful to be on this podcast. Thank you, Josie.